If there's one thing that BMW never seems to get right, it's the oil pan gaskets on their engines. It seems like BMW engines just leak oil from the factory. At least that's the running joke. Well, we're gonna take care of that problem in this video. I'm gonna change the gasket on this E90 BMW with an N54 engine, so stay tuned. So I've done some prep for this job last night. I removed all the plastic splash shields, just a bunch of 8mm bolts all the way around. That's real simple. You don't need to see how to do that. Obviously, I've jacked the car up on all 4 jack stands. I believe that's very important. Always support your car evenly on 4 jack stands, not just 2. Check out how much oil leaked just overnight. Obviously, I wiped up everything that was there last night. You can see kind of the puddle, how far back it had gone, way almost to the back of the car. And it just leaked that much sitting here overnight. So this thing leaks just sitting here. It's really bad at this point. I've also removed the front wheels. It makes it a lot easier to just slide under the car that way. Yeah, so that's all the prep we need to do under here. You will need a specialty tool for this job, the engine support bar, which you can get at Harbor Freight. The reason you need that is because we're going to be holding the engine up from above, because we're going to be dropping the subframe down below. If we drop that subframe and we're not supporting the engine will drop with it. So you need that, but obviously we need to connect this to the car, so we're missing a vital connection here. I'm gonna show you where to find that. That can be found here in the trunk. You come back here, you lift this little panel up, and that's where you're gonna find all your tools missing, and hopefully your tow hook is still remaining, and that's what you need. By the way, I have also disconnected the battery right here. I've just disconnected the negative cable. Not absolutely necessary. We're not gonna get anywhere close to the starter or the alternator on this job, but for safety, might as well. And quick tip, if you do disconnect your battery, you can just manually push your lock close, which I've already done. That way when you put the trunk lid down, it won't snap shut. So now we take our tow hook and we thread it into that threaded hole right there. That's what it's made for. And that's how we're gonna support the engine. So obviously I have removed some components from the engine in order to do this. I needed to remove the engine cover because it was just kind of barely covering that hole. To do that, you got to remove that rear cowl. I've covered how to do those things in almost every video I've made on this car so far. So just go ahead, reference one of those, you know, the coils and plugs or anything like that, and you'll figure out how to do that. That again is also a basic thing that you just need to know how to do on this car, especially if you're going to do this job. This is definitely a more advanced job, and the assumption is that you've done certain things on the car before and you at least know how to get to this state. All right, so now we're supported. The hook is hooked under here. It's tight. It's gonna hold the engine up. You can give this sucker a little bit of tension. Otherwise, once you lower the subframe, the engine will drop a little bit and it'll kind of scare you. Sorry for the interruption, but we have to thank this week's sponsor, which is OEMBimmerparts.com. I love this website. They've got super fast 2-day shipping. They've got multiple warehouses all over the US so they can get your parts out to you as fast as possible. And I love their website. It's well categorized. There's not a lot of extra stuff. It's just all the most popular parts that you're gonna need, and they're the OEM brands. They do also have some quality aftermarket brands as well if that's what you're looking for. So if you are in the market for BMW parts of any kind, please check out OEMBimmerparts.com. So before we get into this job, I'm gonna spend a little bit of time talking about the job because the prep for the job is just as important as the job itself. I want you to understand the job and what it entails. So there's a few videos on YouTube already doing this, and I believe in most of them, people just end up taking the subframe out completely. And you know, that's one way to go, and you can do it that way. The thing is, that's a lot of extra work, and you probably don't need to do that. Because to do that, what's involved is you actually have to disconnect the steering joints from the steering knuckles. Let's take a look over here actually at that. So on this car, you actually have 2 lower suspension members here and here in addition to the tie rod. So you have to either disconnect all 3 of those from here, or you need to disconnect the tie rod from here and then disconnect the suspension links from here and here, which is what I would do because that's a little easier. If you did it here, you'd have to bang on these ball joints in order to knock them loose. You have to bang right here where they're going through. And you know, that's a lot of work and you got to do it both sides, and it's like, that's a pain in the butt. Here, you don't have to do that. Just take the bolt loose and they'll just drop right down. And you'll leave the knuckle behind, you'll take the subframe out. So, you'd have to do that. And then you have the problem of the steering rack. Now, the steering rack needs to stay attached to the subframe no matter what, because otherwise you're going to have to get an alignment after that. If you disconnect these or take these bolts loose right here, your subframe is just going to be loose, and there's no locating pins or dowels at all right here. This is all that it bolts to. So if you take those loose, then your alignment is immediately jacked and you got to go get the thing aligned afterwards. So why spend another $80? You know what I mean? Just leave that connected. It's far better to just disconnect the line from the steering and drain the power steering fluid and just fill it up with power, more power steering fluid. That's easy. That's cheap. You can do that yourself. You don't need anybody after that. So that is definitely what you would do if you want to take the subframe all the way out. Leave the steering rack there, disconnect the line from it. That is going to leave the line dangling. That's going to be in your way. That's just how it is. You can then disconnect the other side of the line from the power steering pump itself. You'll have a lot better access to do that once the frame is down. So again, that's something you can do. So I'm not going to do any of that. I am just going to drop the whole subframe down and let it dangle, which means that I'm going to leave the suspension members connected to it, and the whole subframe is going to come down. It's not quite going to touch the ground, but it'll be dangling quite a bit, and we'll have access to change the oil pan gasket after that. Now, I know you're thinking that this looks like a really complicated job, but it's actually deceptively complicated. It's really not that hard. There's not that much to take loose, especially doing it the way I'm going to do it. There's 3 bolts holding on either side, holding this subframe to the body. And in order to drop the subframe after that, the subframe is going to be connected to the engine through 2 engine mounts and the steering shaft linkage. So the steering shaft is connected into the steering rack right here, and there's 1 bolt that's pinching the 2 together. And as far as the engine mounts go, you can take them loose from underneath here because they are bolted to the subframe down here with 2 bolts. And they're also bolted to the engine brackets from above with 1 bolt. And I can get at the bolts from above, and I can easily get at the bolts from down below. It's a little harder to get at the ones from above, but it's doable. I'm debating which way to go. I think I might disconnect them just from here underneath because it's faster and easier, and see what that gets me. And I'm suspecting that I'm going to have to change those engine mounts anyway, so I'm probably going to have to take them loose from above anyway, but we'll get there when we get there. So these are the parts that you're going to need in order to do this job. Obviously, a new engine oil pan gasket and a new set of bolts for the oil pan. These are aluminum bolts. They're one-time use. You have to change them. You should change them. That being said, there are guys who don't change them. And yes, I don't recommend that, but one thing I want to point out about these bolts, if you're going to be that guy, every one of these bolts has some thread sealant at a specific spot on them. And that's very important. If you're going to reuse the bolts, you have to put new thread sealant on all these bolts in the proper location. Otherwise, it's going to leak and you did the whole job for nothing. So if you're going to do that, make sure you put the thread sealant on, but replace it. It's really not that much money. Just replace it. It's for safety. Also, engine oil. You're going to drain your engine oil because you're taking the oil pan off. So you're going to need new oil and a new filter. Everything has been supplied by OEMBimmerparts.com, my longtime sponsor, so I definitely want to thank them. As far as other targets of opportunity during this job, the engine mounts would be the biggest ones, and I should have thought about that, and I should have ordered those, but that's okay. I will get them here. Maybe while you're down there, if you haven't done your water pump, it's definitely a lot easier to do it while the subframe's out, but again, not required, and I just did mine, so that's not an issue. Other than that, I think this is going to be it, so let's move on. Now is the time to drain the engine oil while the subframe is not dangling and kind of in our way. So I got my pan underneath here. All right, guys, we need to get this bolt off. It's right in there, right there. It's an E-Torx bolt. It is an E10, I believe. Yep, E10. And I'm gonna need to just sneak the E10 on the ratchet up through there, get it on, and try to get the bolt off. Oh, it looks like the steering was not locked. Okay, now it is. So it's on. I'm gonna try to get this loose, and I think I got it. Yeah, so it's just kind of a lot of this. Oh, this came off.
So now that I have it loose, I have my stubby, which I'm hoping will get a little more swing and might make it a little easier on me. Hey, we got it out. There's our prize. Ah, that hurt me. I've got early carpal tunnel going on. So next we're going to take off some of this plastic back here because it's hiding the back of the subframe. 8 mils, and we have a 10 mil right here, it looks like. It's best to have a buddy helping you out, getting the tools for you. It's always super helpful so you don't have to get up and down off the ground a bunch of times. There you go. So this cross brace, we got to get that off, and then subframe's down here. Was that being covered up? Yeah, that was. Keep the bolts with the thing, with the part that you take off. It's always the best way to go. So for the cross brace, these are 16. Uno más. So for the engine mounts, it's just E12s here and here. Over here on the right side of the car. Here at the front of the subframe, the only thing that I see that actually needs to come loose is this coolant crossover pipe. It's actually bolted to the top of the front of the subframe here. So I got to get back up there and unbolt that. And this is definitely in the way. You really can't get it from the front, so I got to get it from the rear. And these little brackets are in the way, so I'll take those off. 10s. I think the easier way to get at those is to get the engine fan out and just get it from above. So I'm gonna take loose the automatic transmission cooler from the fan, and then we can go up top and pull the fan. Pulling the fan, quick and dirty, is these T20s here. Get this out, and then we just need to disconnect. There, like that. This line pops up and off of it. And then we just have one bolt to get out right there. It is also a T25. I don't want to drop it. Now the fan can pull right out. There's actually another little rubber thing right down in there. Pop it free. Little pry bar like that. There we go. Now I can see those bolts. They're right here, and then another one right here. See, I would have been there forever doing it by hand. Oh, so stupid. These bolts did not need to be that long. All right, we got those bolts out. One last thing, guys, is this line for the power steering. It's actually connected with this rubber mount right here, so you want to undo this bolt if your rubber mount's not broken like mine is. Mine happens to be zip tied in, so I just cut this zip tie. And what that allows this line to do is sort of extend downward and flex. There's actually a lot of length in this line, so it'll just flex right down. We're going to unbolt the subframe. It's a 18 mil. There's two. I'm gonna leave that on just a little loose, just in case. Now I got to use an extension for this one, and that reduces the torque a lot, so I don't know if this will come free. Let's see if it can do it. So a little too much torque loss there. Let's see how the mid torque does. No problem for the mid torque. So we're dropping down a little, not too much. Cool. So again, I'll leave them loose just in case. I'll come and get them by hand afterwards. Okay, here on the other side. That one can come all the way out. And the final two. So I'm less afraid on this side because I know this side is pinned in by the steering rack. That's actually going to be a little bit of a bear to kind of get loose. So, you know, I'm not too afraid. I don't have the jack under here. Really, I don't think it's going to be necessary yet. There we go. Short one in the back. big long one in the middle and sort of medium long one in the back there, or in the front. So as you see, we are, I mean, we're loose, but we're pinned in there by the steering rack, which is going to be a little challenging to get loose. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get the other side off. So I'm not too afraid of it because, again, it's held up by the suspension on either end. It's really not that heavy either. As you can see, it's loose, it's down, completely loose like this. Only thing holding it up is the steering rack linkage right there. And really that's just because that steering thing is pinching the steering rack. So really the ideal thing would be to slip something in there and kind of spread it open, but there's not really easy access. So, oh, one thing I forgot. One thing I forgot is the steering thing here. Steering angle sensor, or actually it's a headlight sensor, sorry. That should come loose and get taken off. This is typically something I do forget as well. Okay, we got it. So guys, it looks like there's one more bolt holding this coolant tube to the frame right here. I couldn't see it before. Totally obscured by the engine. But we can just get it here now. Oops, that's the wrong size. Cool. So yeah, it's an interesting view, isn't it? That's the only thing holding the engine up, right, or holding the frame up, is that little steering linkage right there. So we got to get in there and see what we can do about it. Now we do have another hose that is connected to the steering, so this is only going to drop so far. We'll deal with that when we come to it. One thing I didn't realize, I was thinking I could keep the sway bar just connected to the frame, but what I didn't realize is that the linkage would basically hold us up in the air there. This thing needs room to pivot downwards, so I need to disconnect it from the frame. It's just some 13s. Like that. See, so that'll let us pivot down, the whole thing down a little bit more. So the challenge is I need to separate this guy from the steering rack right here. You know what, guys? Now that I'm thinking about it, we probably don't need to disconnect that steering at all. We kind of got all the access we need right here. I mean, look, I can get my hand in here. I can get at all of these bolts. Definitely get at the ones along the side. Get those out. I got to deal with this, with the automatic transmission lines here. Got to get those disconnected and kind of move the side a little bit. That's not too hard. And the pan comes out, from the back. So I think I might just leave it like this. I mean, it'd be nice to have the whole subframe down a little lower, but I don't think it's necessary. The only problem for me is just getting these shots. So guys, I was able to get the steering linkage off. I'm sorry I didn't get a shot of it, but all I did was I used this long screwdriver that I have, another Harbor Freight $10 tool. It's got a little striking cap on the back. I just put it on the back of the steering linkage thing and just banged on it with a hammer and it popped right off. The funny thing is that didn't actually drop us down. We're still hung up on something. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Oh, actually it's just the linkage. That's what it is. It's just the rubber and the bushings right here. This is just pinched so tight that if I push this down, it wants to pull us back up. So really the way to get this down would be just to loosen this right here. Loosen this bolt, probably loosen this one too. The subframe will drop a little lower. I think I'm just gonna do that just to get a little more, just get a little more clearance from my shots, my camera shots, but you don't have to do this. I think it is totally doable to just do this job like this. You've got all the room in the world that you need right here. Drop the subframe down, get in there, do what you need to do, get it out. It's just the easiest way to do it. And obviously the fastest way as well. But yeah, I'm just gonna drop this down as much as I can. Not a big deal. These are just 18s. See, now we're coming down a little. Now that that's a little loose, that side can just pull down a little bit more. Let's see, steering is holding this up that much. So we really didn't gain that much from that, to be honest with you. That was maybe totally unnecessary for me. We need to take loose the automatic transmission lines. They're bolted to the actual oil pan, and it looks like my bolt here is missing. So not sure what to say about that, but this 10 mil is right here. So I'll get this one off. Okay, looks like it's one of those. So that's loose there. There's actually a third one over in the back, which we'll get later. Actually, I think I'm not going to take this all the way out. I'm just going to leave it here. Just leave it a little bit loose. So there we go. Now, one more thing we need to remove is the power steering pump, because it's actually bolted to the oil pan. So we need to remove all three. One, two, and then the third one's in the back going at this angle right here. Yeah, so those are E12s. I need to get the belt off first though. This is a good time to actually swap your power steering pulley with an all aluminum one, the plastic one with an aluminum one, because this tends to hit on the subframe right here on these earlier cars. I guess they modified the subframe a little later, but mine seems to be okay. It's not really damaged. And I will be replacing the engine mounts, and that's supposedly the problem with those. I'll have to inspect those engine mounts in a little bit. So yeah, I'm gonna go up, I'm gonna loosen the belt off, and then we'll take the power steering pump off, and we'll pull that bolt for the back of the lines connected to the back of the oil pan, and then we'll pull the oil pan off. This is where things get annoying for me. In order to turn the pulley here, I need to get the tool in here, but the crossover pipe, which you can't see, it's just out of frame, but it's right here, just blocking that. Yeah, it's hard to light this. It's hard. Everything on this is hard. Pop this down a little, and then it's bolted in here and here. Comes away just a little bit. I think that's all I need. That wasn't such a big deal. It's a big T60. Which way do we go? I forget. This way. All right. I'm going to put that in. Get this little nail ready to go in. It's not a nail, it's just a bar. You could use like a 16 penny nail to do this. That's it. Just get it in that much. And now it's kind of locked in the loose position. I'm going to leave the belt basically where it is, and I'll just take it off from the pulley down below. And the only reason I loosen this is just to make it easier to get it back on and stuff, you know. This is the best shot I can get you. You gotta get in here, crack these bolts loose first. And then there's another up here. This socket is too long. This engine is filthy. It's caked in so much gunk, man. I gotta clean it. Do that off camera. All right, I gotta get the right tool. Okay. So that bolt is over here on the side. You can see my socket and ratchet are on it. I need to crack it without stripping it. Jeez. Okay, actually, I cannot hold the camera and do this at the same time. I got to get this loose without damaging it, and yeah, then I'll get a shot of getting it off. Man, it is frustrating. Nothing on this car is magnetic anymore. I have nothing to stick my light to. We're just gonna have to settle for a wide shot here while I get this out. There we go. So there's that other bolt. So now we are free, and the power steering pump is loose. I'm gonna stick it over here. hopefully you can see all the way back there that the power steering lines, cooler lines are still connected to the engine oil pan with a bolt back there. So I'm gonna go back there with a 10 mil. I'll disconnect it. Yeah, there's not much to that. Cool, so that's loose. Ow, they're loose. I don't think that we'll need to take them out of the transmission. That should not be necessary. They should just sort of come right aside. Yeah, I think so. I actually uncovered a little bit of a cooling leak. There's the O-ring on the hose that's connected into this is not good anymore, I suppose. I'll have to get an O-ring kit and replace that. All right, it is time to get this pan off. So these are all E12s. Get off everything that I can. All the bolts are kind of different lengths, so I'm going to note that as I go. Still, it's easy to figure that out. You're wondering why I don't clean this off first? Because it's going to be easier to clean it when the pan is completely off. Looks like all the dirt is mostly on the pan. Well, I'm sure there's dirt caked up above it, of course, but I can't really get at that to clean it anyway. Okay, long one. Obviously these ones down here are going to be even longer. Slight bit longer. And this does have 3 bolts going in from this way. There's one here, and one up here. So we are going to have to get those as well. Look at that. We only got 4 bolts to go. All right, I think I'm going to leave this last one in. I'm going to take these 3 out. Aha. Got that one. These ones we're not replacing, so we'll set those aside. There we go. All right. I think we got that one more bolt. So it's just stuck on a little bit. Yep, see? There it is. So you guys got to go back. And that's it. Let's get our gasket out. I kind of want to do this carefully because I want to examine it. Okay. There's our gasket. Not too much of a pain. If you want to know why BMW oil pan gaskets suck, it's because they get hard. They're no longer rubber and they don't seal anymore. It's because they just use this inferior grade of rubber, I guess. I mean, you're telling me that there's not rubber out there that can withstand these engine temperatures better than this? There definitely is. Other cars don't really have this problem. You know, no, it's not that they run hotter or colder, I don't think. It's just, I honestly think it's value engineering and they just choose not to use the best quality rubber for some reason. I don't know. Or maybe there is no such rubber that will last more than 100,000 miles. I'm not that much of an engineer, I don't know. There's some debate over whether a Victor Rein's gasket will last on these cars. You know, I tend to really discount the experience from people like posting stuff online on message boards or forums or chats or whatever, just because I don't know that person. I don't know if they did the job right. I don't know if they replaced the bolts or if they reused the bolts. I don't know if they put the sealant where they were supposed to. That could be the reason why they've got leaks after they put a Victor Reinz gasket on their car. So I don't really know, but I have confidence in Victor Reinz gaskets. I haven't had problems with them in the past, so I'm going to go ahead and do a Victor Reinz gasket on this thing. And yeah, I guess time will tell whether that is a good idea or not, but I don't have a problem with it. I'm going to leave the oil pan draining, and then I'm going to clean it off as best I can. A lot of degreaser. I'm going to definitely clean it off. Hey, I might even take it to the machine shop and have them hot tank it. Why not? Maybe. Probably cost 10 bucks. I'm going to get the engine mounts off the car while I'm still dirty and just examine them, see if they're good, if I want to keep them or if I need to replace them. So I think I'm going to do that right now. And then we're going to call this a day because I'm going to order those engine mounts and we'll put everything back together another day. See if I can get these from underneath. I kind of don't think so. Yeah, not really. I got to do it from above. I wonder if they were replaced already. They don't feel like loose or anything. They don't feel bad, you know? They might have been replaced. But I kind of want to know that for sure before I order them because, you know, maybe we can just finish the job today if I don't need to change these. Then I got everything I need. They feel great, you know? I don't know what a loose one would actually, I mean, I would expect when they get worn out, they're just like torn apart inside and stuff. But they actually feel good and, you know, there were no vibrations at all in the car. I'm really thinking that they were replaced. Oh, this one actually. This one's screwed. I can feel that this one's jacked up. Okay. So, there we go. The left one's good, but I'll order 2 new ones anyway. That's good enough. Yeah, so I'll go loosen them from above and drop them down. So, unfortunately, this is one of those things where it's just very difficult to see anything with the camera, get a shot of it, but that's the bolt right there for the left side engine mounts. Obviously you can see I can just get a socket with a long extension all the way down there. It's a 16. Take it off and the engine mount will drop down. Basically the same thing on the other side. This one on the right side, definitely impossible to see. But that sort of silver pipe that you see there, that is coolant crossover pipe. And I don't know if you would call it that. It's a coolant pipe. And basically behind it is where the bolt would be. Kind of, it's just impossible to get a shot of. I'm sorry, but I'm hoping I can get at it with the socket and extension. If not, maybe that's the one you do from underneath. So we'll see. So, you know, guys, all in all, this job was really not that bad. I can see what those guys were talking about, how, you know, you could probably do one of these in an hour and a half if you've done them before, because you know exactly the steps to take. My problem is, okay, I've done this, but by the next time I do it, I'll probably forget most of it. That one was easy. Okay, that's off, that's loose. The other side, that's gonna be the difficult side. So yeah, it's probably not an hour and a half. It's probably more like, you know, 3 hours really, but depends on how much cleaning you're gonna do. The difficult thing here is seeing the damn bolt. I'm sort of using the force. Ooh, did I get it? I think I got it. I think I got on it. Let's see. Yeah, I got it. Haha. I heard something fall. Hopefully it was an engine mount. Aha. That was loose. Cool. So that one's out. Now our other one. Oh, our other one definitely dropped down right onto the frame. Aha. And that one we felt was loose. It actually might have just been just not tightened all the way. I think that's what it was. I think that these mounts probably, no, this one's definitely done. Okay, never mind. So this one's done, this one needs to be replaced. I'll get both of them. Might as well. Cool. All right, guys, it's been about a week and I got the oil pan cleaned at the machine shop for 15 bucks. So yeah, that's a lot better than me doing the cleaning. I was never gonna get it this clean. Anyway, I also was able to get in new engine mounts from OEM Bimmer Parts. I also got a power steering reservoir because I noticed the one on the car is leaking. So they sent me all of that in a couple of days, so that's really great. I also did buy an O-ring kit for all the coolant lines because of that leak that I noticed. That's upstairs. I'll grab that. That'll be done last. And yeah, so we're basically ready to go back on the car. I just need to kind of prep the oil pan gasket, get it onto the oil pan. And there's a trick for doing that because you see how this thing is kind of sitting at an angle. If we put the gasket on here, it's just going to slide off every time and be a pain to get it back on the car. But I got a little trick for it. So let me prep it and I'll show you what it is. So this is the trick right here. Just some zip ties fitted loosely here and here. That'll hold the gasket on, keep it from like slipping all the way off and frustrating you. And when we put the thing back up in place, you know, we'll have to reach up and position the gasket a little bit, but you know, you could make it a little tighter if you want to, but it doesn't need to be that super tight. I just want to leave it a little loose so I have room to kind of get in there with and clip it off, you know, so you can, I don't know, make it like that tight, kind of like that. So there, you know, it can't really move too much and easy as pie to slip it back on. So we'll do that, put it up in the car and get moving. So check it out, guys. I actually cleaned under here a couple days ago. Just made sure to clean it as best I could. I mean, it's not perfect, can't eat off it, but it's a lot better than it was. Remember, it was just kind of totally covered and caked in grease and dirt. So got all that off and we're prepped and we're ready to go back in. Quick note here, the bolt kit came with the torque sequences. Basically, we're going to tighten everything to an initial torque of 8 Newton meters, which is 6 foot-pounds. And then from there, we have to actually do an angle. That's very interesting. A 60-degree angle is actually kind of a pain. Yeah. All right, here we go. So now we just kind of got to get a couple bolts started. I think this is a bolt kit for the N54 and N55. So I don't think we use all of these bolts. I think that's what it is. So it's obviously the long ones go here, right? And then the shorter ones, 3 shorter ones go here. And then everything else is just the really short one. And then let's just get one in the front here. Maybe another one up over here. I'm just trying to lock the gasket into place right now. All right, let's reach up and cut the zip ties. There's 1 and 2. All right, so I'm just gonna spend some time threading all these in and getting them tight. And then I will torque everything down to 8 Newton meters to start with. You know, it occurs to me that one of the benefits of leaving the subframe hanging like this is that should your engine support brace fail and, like, I don't know, the little hooks on it, should one of those like break off because of Harbor Freight quality, this engine will drop, but then it'll get caught by the subframe. So as long as your arm's not in here like that, you'll be safe. So guys, I started to have problems putting in some of those bolts. I noticed that they kind of weren't going in very well. I was getting some, it felt like they were kind of galling up. And on one of these, I actually stripped out the tip of the threads a little bit. So when that happened, I'm like, okay, we're stopping. We're gonna pull everything off. I need to chase all the threads on these because I imagine that some of that sealant kind of got stuck in there or something like that, but I don't know, but I'm gonna chase them all with a thread chaser, clean all those bolt holes out. I should have done that before I started, so it's not a big deal. And on some of these bolts, I think I did kind of eat into the sealant a little bit. So I will put some new thread sealant on these bolts in the area where they go, just to make sure they seal. So there's a good tip for you. Make sure you chase all the thread holes before you start this. So this is my thread chaser. It's actually part of a thread, it's part of a rethreading set. And this is an 8mm by 1.25 thread pitch. So that just, you know, you use a 11mm socket on it and just kind of goes in and, You can kind of get in there and, you know, chase the threads. And you could also use a tap if you don't have this. Try to find a bottoming tap. That's what this is. It's essentially a bottoming tap. So yeah, I probably won't use the socket. I'll probably just kind of do it by hand here. Just go in, clean everything out. You could also use one of the old bolts and you can just kind of, you know, cut a slot in it to kind of clear the chips if you have a grinder. If you do have a grinder, you probably know this already. So I've only done a couple holes so far, and this has already been cleaning out quite a bit of gunk from in them. So I would say this is absolutely mandatory. Plan on doing this when you do this job. So on the hole where I actually stripped out the tip of that one bolt, I actually needed to resort to a real tap, a regular tapered tap, in order to fix it, because there was so much aluminum kind of left in there that I just couldn't get the rethreader started because the tip was too blunt. So definitely chase these threads, man. This sucks. All right, guys, I finished chasing all the holes. So when it comes to my damaged bolt, my one damaged bolt here, there are two choices. I can reuse one of my old bolts. That should be fine. I mean, it's one bolt. It's not gonna, you know, I don't think it's gonna spontaneously snap or anything like that. I think the only danger really reusing it is maybe if I retorqued it using the original procedure, it might snap because it's already been torqued to yield once and it's aluminum. So it's a little weaker. You know, if it's a steel bolt, I wouldn't have any concern, but it's aluminum. It might just the head might snap off, you know, so I'm worried about that. So what I did was I ran the die, the rethreading die from the rethreading kit over the top of this. So this could actually be threaded in. I will test that and make sure that it kind of goes in, and it does. So I'll put that in, you know, an easy place, maybe up at the top over there, something like that, where it's kind of real easy to get in. And I'll just reuse that just because it hasn't been stretched yet. Yeah, and there's only about 5 bolts really where I'm kind of concerned about the sealant stuff. So I'm just gonna put some new thread sealer on those, on the area where it goes, and reuse those. So let's reset, and I'll get the oil pan on for good this time. Okay, so all the bolts are in, and that was pretty tedious. That kind of sucked. I have, in some cases they went on a little bit rough right at the end, so I've gone through and I made sure that they're all loose, which they are. And now I'm going through and just torquing them to 8 Newton meters to start off with, and I will do that with various lengths of extensions, and then we'll do the final torquing. So guys, I have verified that these instructions are correct on the BMW Technical Information System. This is the 112 millimeter long bolt. This is the 92, and these are the 26s. So the 2 long ones basically are 180 degrees, and all the short ones are 60 degrees. So to turn all these little bolts 60 degrees it's just going to be a pain. I do have one of these Eastwood torque angle wrenches, but it sucks to use. It's really not good. And if you don't complete the 60 degrees right away, you're screwed, because this thing, it senses the motion by the direction it turns in the air, not by the direction that this turns, because it's all super loose. And yeah, so it sucks. It's not accurate really. I mean, it's accurate if you complete it in one turn. So I think the only real way to do this is just by hand, just to kind of visualize it. So you just have to get the tool on right now. A right angle to this shaft right here, that's 90 degrees. So we really just want 2/3 of that. So we kind of just want this to end up right about here, okay? And that's basically all there is to it. So that's what I'm gonna end up doing. Try to get the right swing. Right about there. So that's what I'm going to do for all of them. I've already done this one and this one. I think what I will do is put a little black mark over the ones that I do, just to make sure I don't lose track. And I'm just going to do all of them just like this. It's going to be really boring and tedious. not going to film the whole thing, but so one thing I'm noticing is, and you know, I've got a lot of experience here, so I can sort of remember, I can make everything sort of the same tension by hand, you know, and I can just sort of feel when I'm kind of getting there. This is kind of about as tight as I would make these bolts by hand anyway, comfortably. So I can just I can feel when I'm right there. So that maybe that helps you. You can kind of get a feel for it and just feel your way through it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. So they're all done. It actually went super quick, not too painful at all. The procedure for the bigger bolts is 180 degrees. And it's just a little easier to do two 90s. So that's what I've been doing. It's basically 12 o'clock to 12 o'clock, half of a circle. So 90, and then another 90. That's it. In the case of these, I'm not going to torque them with a torque wrench or anything. I'm just going to get them tight using my, my best judgment. Cool. Got to put that mark on it. That's my OCD. We're going to have to get this steering column reattached to the steering rack. And you can see how there's this little slot right here that actually indexes onto a piece of plastic. But really what that is that's where it pinches. That's where the bolt pinches this thing closed. So I'm going to slip a screwdriver in here and just kind of hammer it a little bit to just open it up a little. I really don't want to open it up too much because what's going to happen in that case when we stick the bolt through, since that bolt has to thread in to this side, if it's opened up too much, the angle will be off, you know, because it'll spread open like this, kind of like that. And, you know, you won't have enough, you won't be able to get the bolt threaded in, and then you'll have to close it a little bit. So I don't want to go too big on this. So hopefully I've gone enough already. And all it's really doing is giving it enough clearance for those fine splines to kind of, you know, get onto the shaft there. So I need to get the jack and lift the subframe up a little. All right, hopefully there's enough definition that you guys can see this. I hate the screen on this camera. It's never as good as what the camera actually sees. So I think this is working just fine. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that slipped right on. Not too bad. Okay, so now I'll get the pinch bolt, stick that in, tighten it up. So I'm gonna slip this bolt in here. It's threading in just fine. So I did not spread it out too wide. And we'll just get her tightened up. Tight. So if you guys remember in a previous video, I said I was going to replace my plastic power steering pump pulley with an aluminum one because, you know, these can crack if your engine mounts are bad, and they can hit on this frame right here and end up cracking, and that ends up shredding the belt. I did buy the pulley. Actually, I forgot that I had already bought the pulley, so I had it at that time, so now I have two. I'm not going to install it this time. This is the perfect time to install it, but I'm not going to because I prefer to do that stuff in its own video. That way people can find that on YouTube and everything. And plus I want to show what it's like to do it, you know, in the car without the frame on and everything. So I'm not going to install it in this case, just going to reinstall this right back. All right, so here we go. Let's put this back into place. Get one of our bolts. You know what? It occurs to me, some of the problems with shredded belts actually have to do with the fact that these bolts loosen off and then disappear. So I'm betting maybe some people put these back in, don't torque them properly, but in this particular, I never like to add thread locker if it didn't come that way from the factory, but since we're about to add power to this engine, that involves making more vibrations and whatnot, it doesn't hurt in this case, I think, to put some blue thread locker on these bolts. So I think I'll do that. Yeah, man, going Chris Fix style on this one. I knew that was cross-threading. I knew that. I know it doesn't look like it, but I did clean this. I probably over tighten them a little bit, but I don't want them coming out. Since it's sort of a known problem area, I'm making them good and tight. Okay, that's good. All right, I will attempt to fiddle with and get this line reconnected. I took the bolt out just so it wouldn't interfere when I was taking the oil pan off. All right, I think you want to get the front one on a little bit first. Cool. And of course, this one up front, we just want to tighten it up all the way. And I am missing that one. Not a big deal though. Is there even supposed to be a bolt there? Oh, I don't think there is. Or maybe there is and that just sandwiches these two pieces together. I mean, it looks like a bolt goes there, but there's no place for it to bolt to, so it's not really like something that's missing, I guess. So I guess all that's left really is slip this belt on right here. I do have to change the O-ring up here on this thing right here, which means I got to drain a little bit of coolant. Before I put the subframe back up, I just want you to note how easy the access is for doing the water pump right here. I mean, look at this. You got access to all the clips, all the ring clamps, everything for the thermostat and then the water pump. So obviously it would have been much easier for me to change this water pump at this point rather than do it in the previous video when the frame was still on. I knew this, and the reason I did it that way is just because I figured most people who had to do their water pump don't have an engine support brace. So yeah, but if you do have one, this is way easier, and it's super easy to get the frame off, as you saw. You know, 6 bolts for the frame, 4 for the sway bar, and 4 for the engine mounts. It's really super simple. The thing drops down, and that's all you got to do. So consider that. So it's actually the next day. I knew it was really late last night when I installed the subframe back up to the car and forgot to put the engine mounts in. Yeah, so decided to call it quits for the night. Start fresh today. Yeah, so we're going to start with the engine mounts. This is the one for the left side as you're sitting in the driver's seat. So this one actually has this little nub right here. And the one on the other side, which is flipped this way, has this rubber shield right here. So that's how you can tell them apart. This one, you know, still good. I can only surmise that they must have changed this at some point, maybe. But we're changing it again. It's best to change them in pairs. So here's this one, the little pointy thing there. All I'm going to do is put it up into place. Now, let's see, I think it goes that way. So it kind of goes down at an angle like that. And it looks like the subframe is a little bit in the way. Yeah. So we just kind of want to put it there. I'm going to give it the old reach around and just kind of put the bolt on. I'm not going to tighten it that much. Obviously can't from underneath here. We're just going to get it sort of tightened on so that the engine mount is there, and then we'll get it from above. I'm going to do that on the other side too. So here's the one for this side. Oh, and it has an R for right. So there we go. So that is basically a heat shield, you know, because the exhaust is right here. Yeah, I don't think it's possible to get these engine mounts out without dropping this subframe. So if you needed to do just the engine mounts, I really think, you know, subframe's got to come down. But once again, that is an easy thing to do. So I already put this back together, tightened the bolt up right here and plugged it back in. You can see that, you have extension on this electrical connector, so you can just drop that down. You don't need to remove it or disconnect it or anything. So when you do it, just ignore that I did that. Okay, let's get this hard coolant line reconnected to the frame here. Figure out where that hole is. Yeah, see, that's going to be a little tricky. I got to use the jack. So there we go. Just got the frame jacked up a little bit. That should be just enough, just what we need. If you're worried if you're going to have an alignment since you've taken the subframe down and put it back up, you're not going to, because you see these big pegs right here that they locate the subframe in place. Basically, once you get it on there, it's really not, once you have it bolted in 3 places, there's not much movement that's going to happen. I mean, there's basically no movement. Yes, if you did go and get it aligned, it might be off a hair, but it's not so much that you're going to have any tire wear or anything like that. It's just not going to be absolutely perfect, but you're never going to keep it perfect even after you do an alignment like that. So what I'm saying is you don't need to go get an alignment. I'm trying to decide what the best view is for you guys for this, but we'll see if this works. So yeah, just going to jack this thing back up into place, and really all you got to be conscious of is those pegs that I just pointed out, which I can see from this angle. And I can see that the rear one, the subframe is, back a little bit. But also we need to be conscious of the engine mounts. Those have to sort of slip into their holes. Looks like this one is doing good. I'm guessing this one is a little bound up. Just slightly, and that's kind of why it's off a little bit. So before you get up too high, you want to make sure that you're sort of aligned. The other one's a little more problematic. It's got more of a channel that it sits in. So the alignment's a little more tricky. Yeah, I can see that the mount is like pointing towards the rear a little bit. It's got to be adjusted. Okay, I can't figure out what's wrong, so let's lower this a bit. Oh yeah, see, it was just kind of caught. Yep, now we're good. Yeah, piece of cake. So I can see our alignment's real good here. Verify over here before we go further. Yeah, that's just fine. This one's not as much of an issue. It doesn't have that channel. The only thing you need to be conscious of is, is the thing oriented correctly? You want to get at the bolts, In fact, it does not hurt to just kind of thread the bolts in a little bit. That'll sort of keep things aligned. So just make sure you have those handy. There's a little peg on the bottom of this that needs to, it's just right next to where the bolt hole is, and that peg goes into its own little hole. Perfect. Yeah, these are pretty easy to work with. There's a similar peg on this side, except it's on the front instead of the back. So one side's gonna probably go on first. And for me, I think it's the left side over here. So I'll make sure that that peg is aligned. And I believe that side, like, even though I've started the peg up here already, the other side probably hasn't started. So I can jump back over there. Oh, I'm wrong. It did start, but it's in the right place. There. So now it's up. And while I'm here, I will just thread the bolts in. The longest bolt goes in the middle. The medium bolt goes on the front, and the short one goes in the back. So it's probably going to be easier to just to get the 2 front bolts on first. Let me just kind of tighten them a little bit. The rear is just kind of sitting down a little bit, and that's just because the weight of the engine, with the engine mounts and everything. I didn't have this problem last night. Okay, so long one up here, short one in the front right here, or medium long one in the front. So one thing I want to note is if you see rust on those bolts, make sure you stop and clean them off with a wire wheel. You can get a little $5 wire wheel to put on your drill from Harbor Freight. That'll clean off rust, or you can just do it on bench grinder if you have that with a wire wheel. But clean those off. You don't want to try to put rusty fasteners back up because you're just going to have threading problems. And yeah, it's kind of a nightmare. Okay, looks like I lifted the car up slightly. Thread this one up. So I'm not really going to torque these. I'm just going to make them good and tight. Yeah. Okay, engine mount nuts. The engine mount didn't quite make it in the right spot. I gotta kind of tap on it. The little pin is just not down where it's supposed to be. Well, that sucks. I think I gotta lift the engine up a little bit by the oil pan. Okay, no big deal. So yeah, you got to get it just so. So that's what it looks like. That's that little pin that I was trying to make sure was in the little slot. It was just kind of off to the side. All right, now for the sway bar, that back up into place. We just have these. All right, we got to get this cross brace put up into place. So guys, I need to do one more step because I loosened these links. I need to actually lift the whole wheel up with my jack so that this member is basically straight across. That's the position it would be in when the car's on the ground with tires on and everything. That's like the natural relaxed position. That's where it should be tight. And then when it flexes downward like this at this downward angle, there should be tension on the bushing. If I were to tighten it right now and then put it back on the ground, there would always be tension on that bushing. You know what I mean? And that's bad. That would kind of destroy the bushing over time. You want that bushing to have no tension when the car is sitting flat on the ground. It should only go into tension when the wheels go up or down too much. So that's what we have to do. So all you have to do is use your jack. So you get to the point where you start to sort of lift the car. That's how you know when you've gone high enough. Normally you would just do this with the wheels on, the car on the ground, but there's no clearance on this car. Okay, let's not forget that front one. So I'll repeat that same thing on the other side and then we'll be good. Well, this is pretty much the end of the job, guys. There are no more parts to put back on. It's just this belt to get back tensioned again. Cool. Yeah, I just got to get the fan back in. So yeah, I'm going to spend some time just kind of putting the engine back together here, all the little things. And then I'm going to put some oil in it. I got to change the oil filter. And I think we'll be ready to drive this thing again. It'll be really nice to not have any leaks. All right, I'll get that back on. So quick note, guys, I did tighten up the front engine mount bolts on the top there. And then remember those two bolts that bolt that coolant crossover pipe to the frame? I got those two. And yeah, got this thing, that the intake channel kind of rebolted to the car. So that's all good. I think that's kind of it, man. You can just get the fan back in, just put all those accessories back on, and we're done. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. It really wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Actually, taking the subframe out is pretty easy on this car. A couple of targets of opportunity, obviously, are the engine mounts and the water pump. If you haven't done that yet, that's easiest to do when the subframe is off. Make sure that you chase the bolt holes on the oil pan gasket. Just don't forget to do that. You're gonna regret it if you forget about that. So yeah, I want to thank again OEM Bimmer Parts for supplying the parts for this video. And if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. I'm Jason, the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.